Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The courtroom was so quiet you could only hear the hum of the air conditioner. 8-year-old Sophie stood on the witness stand, her tiny hand clutching an iPhone with a pink case that belonged to her mother, Elena. Judge Hartwell frowned at the little blonde girl, unsure of what would happen next. Your Honor, Sophie's voice was crisp and firm. I'd like to play a video from Mom's phone. Marcus, sitting in the plaintiff's box, felt his heart race. 8 months ago, he was a happy husband and father. Now his whole world depended on this brave little girl and the evidence in her hands. Elena's face instantly pales, and her lawyer rushes to her feet ready to protest. But Sophie has already pressed play. Marcus Donovan never imagined he'd be sitting in his garage late at night with his wife's credit card bill in his hand, analyzing each expense line by line. As an electrical engineer, he is used to solving complex technical problems, believing that data and logic can solve everything. But all engineering principles become useless in the face of betrayal and marriage. The change began subtly. Elena has always been an appearance-conscious woman, but lately she's taken her concern for her appearance to new heights. She started going to the hair salon twice a week, purchased a whole new line of cosmetics, and even restarted wearing her college-era perfume. To add to the confusion, she began wearing lingerie Marcus had never seen before, expensive lace and silk items. Are these new? Marcus asked one night when he saw Elena in a set of obviously expensive black lace lingerie. Oh, these. Elena replied, a hint of nervousness flashing across her face. I bought it online. Women need to make themselves feel special sometimes. But Marcus knew about their joint credit card account, and he hadn't seen any record of the expensive lingerie purchase. That means Elena either pays in cash or she has a credit card he doesn't know about. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began to watch Elena's behavior more closely. She started checking her cell phone more often, even when they were watching TV or eating. She would suddenly leave the room to answer the phone, claiming it was work-related. Most disturbingly, Elena begins to become more secretive about her schedule. I'm going to be late tonight, Elena would say. Ryan wants me to look at some new real estate listings. Ryan Sterling. The name began to come up more and more frequently in Elena's conversations. Marcus knew him as the senior partner at Pinnacle Realty where Elena worked, a 42-year-old divorced man. Marcus had met him at several of the company's social events and was impressed with his overconfidence and apparent wealth. Ryan always wears a tailored suit and drives a silver Porsche 911 and talks about his investments and business opportunities. Marcus started paying attention to how often Elena mentioned Ryan. Ryan's name came up 12 times in 1 week. Ryan suggested a new marketing strategy. Ryan invited her to an industry conference. Ryan thinks she should expand into commercial real estate. Ryan is interested in your career development, Marcus commented one night. He's my mentor, Elena replied, but she avoided eye contact. He has a lot of experience in the industry. Mentor, Marcus repeated, the word feeling strange on his lips. Elena's pattern of behavior begins to look more suspicious. She began to work later, often not returning home until 9 or 10 p.m. She started checking out the property on weekends, sometimes staying away from home all afternoon. What alarms Marcus most is that Elena begins to show a newfound enthusiasm for their life as a couple, an enthusiasm that feels both sudden and unreal. Marcus decided to conduct a more systematic investigation. He began documenting Elena's behavioral patterns, creating a detailed schedule of the hours she claimed to work versus the times she actually came home. He found several disturbing inconsistencies. Elena claimed to have attended a client dinner on Wednesday night, but Marcus called her office and was told that she had left at 4 p.m. Elena said she was checking out suburban properties on Saturday, but Marcus drove by the address she claimed to be going to and realized there were no homes for sale there. Marcus begins to look more deeply into Elena's financial activities. He discovered some shocking facts. Elena has opened a new credit card account that she never told Marcus about. Even more disturbing, she had been using the card to make large purchases, expensive restaurant bills, hotel expenses, and even jewelry purchases. The most shocking discovery was a receipt that Elena forgot to remove from her purse. This is a bill from an upscale hotel showing the cost of a 2-night stay on the exact weekend Elena claims to have been at a work seminar. Marcus felt his world begin to fall apart, but he forced himself to remain calm. As an engineer, He knows that circumstantial evidence alone is not enough. He needs hard evidence. That night, when Elena says she needs to meet with an important client, Marcus makes a decision that changes all of their lives. He followed her. Elena didn't go to any commercial places. Instead, she drove to an upscale residential area of town and pulled up to a modern townhouse. Marcus recognized the silver Porsche 911 parked in the driveway. Even more shocking, Elena used her own key to open the front door. She has the keys. This means that this is not the first, nor is it an occasional business meeting. It's an ongoing, intimate relationship. Marcus sat in his car for 3 hours, his anger gradually shifting from shock to calm determination. When Elena finally comes out, her appearance confirms Marcus' worst suspicions. Her hair was disheveled, her shirt was buttoned the wrong way up, and the lipstick had disappeared from her lips. But in that moment, Marcus didn't feel the explosive anger he expected. Instead, he felt a strange calm, a sense of clarity. His suspicions were confirmed, and now he knew what he was dealing with. On the drive home, Marcus begins to formulate his plan to fight back. Marcus didn't confront Elena immediately. As an engineer, he believes in a systematic approach and detailed preparation. He decided to use the same approach he uses to solve complex problems at work: analyze, plan, and execute. First, he needs more evidence. Marcus contacted a private investigator, Daniel Rodriguez, a former police officer who now specializes in extramarital affairs and custody cases. "I needed to know the full scope of the relationship," Marcus told Daniel during their first meeting. Not only what they were doing, but what they were planning. Daniel is a man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a direct manner. "Do you suspect it's more than just a sexual relationship?" "I suspect it's part of a larger plan," Marcus replied. "Elena's been asking questions about our property, and she's starting to act as if she's preparing for some kind of change." Daniel nods. "I've seen a lot of cases like this. Often, when there are children and significant property involved, it's not just about sex. It's about starting a new life again." Over the next few weeks, Daniel begins his investigation. He photographed Elena and Ryan together, not only at Ryan's house, but also at restaurants, hotels, and even on weekend trips. The photos show an obviously intimate and comfortable relationship that has clearly been going on for months. But the more shocking information Daniel discovers has to do with Elena's financial activities. Not only did she open a secret credit card account, but she also opened a new bank account. Even more disturbing, she had been systematically transferring funds from her and Marcus' joint account to this new account. She was transferring between $500 and $1,000 a week, Daniel reports. Amounts small enough not to be immediately noticeable, but which add up to a significant amount over a period of months. Marcus crunched the numbers. Elena has transferred over $15,000, which is almost a quarter of their savings. "There's more," Daniel continued. "Elena has been meeting with an attorney. I followed her to 3 different law firms." The message made Marcus's blood run cold. Elena isn't just having an affair, she's preparing for a divorce. What's worse is that she's doing this in secret while continuing to live with Marcus and acting like nothing happened. Marcus realizes that he's not facing a simple affair, but an elaborate betrayal. Elena is planning to leave him, take their property, and probably the children. That night, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. If Elena wants war, he'll give her war. But it won't be an emotional, impulsive battle. This will be a well-planned, systematic counterattack. Marcus' first step was to protect his assets. He contacted Patricia Coleman, the best divorce attorney in town, known for her relentlessness in complex property disputes. "Elena's been moving money around," Marcus told Patricia from her modern office downtown, "and she thinks I don't know it, but I've been monitoring her activities." Patricia was a woman in her 50s with silver-white hair and sharp green eyes. Her office walls are lined with various legal awards she has received and photos of her successful cases. "You did the right thing," Patricia said, her voice filled with a sense of professional authority. "A lot of men wait until it's too late to take action. We need to freeze all joint accounts immediately and get a court order to protect your interests." Marcus nods, but he has other plans. "I also want full custody." Patricia looked at him, assessing his resolve. "On what grounds?" "Typically, courts favor joint custody. Based on the fact that she's unfit to be a mother," Marcus replied, his voice becoming firmer. What would a woman willing to betray her family for another man, a woman willing to deceive and manipulate, do to her children? Patricia took notes. We need to build a strong case. It's not enough to have an affair. We need to prove that Elena's behavior directly impacted her ability to be a mother. Then we look for evidence, Marcus said. Over the next few days, Marcus began to implement the next phase of his plan. He began to document Elena's behavior more carefully, paying particular attention to anything that might affect the children. He notices that Elena is starting to act more irritable and distracted around the kids. She'll get mad at Sophie and David for little things, then a few minutes later act overly friendly as if she's making up for her behavior. Marcus also begins to bond with Elena's family, especially her sister Carla. Carla, who is 5 years younger than Elena, has been confused by Elena's recent change in behavior. She's become a different person, Carla admitted during one of their coffee meetings. More selfish, more focused on her own needs. She hardly ever talks about Sophie and David anymore. All she talks about is about her career development and her new opportunities. Marcus carefully steers the conversation. Have the children mentioned anything unusual? David called me last week, Carla said, her expression turning worried. And he asked me why Mom is always so happy but so angry at the same time. Kids notice more than adults think they do. Marcus nods. I just want to make sure they are safe and happy. I know, Marcus. Whatever happened to Elena, you've been a good father. The kids love you. This conversation gave Marcus an important insight. Elena's family began to notice a change in her, and more importantly, so did the children. Marcus realizes he needs more direct evidence of Elena's misconduct. He decided to utilize an unexpected resource, his own children. Marcus did not directly ask Sophie and David to spy on their mother. Instead, he began to encourage them to share more of their daily lives with him. Tell me what you did today, Marcus would say at dinner. I want to hear about how you're doing at school, how you're doing at home, everything. 11-year-old David is particularly perceptive. He begins to notice inconsistencies in Elena's behavior, her frequent outings, her relationship with Uncle Ryan. Dad, David said one night when Marcus was helping him with his math homework, why is Mom always laughing on the phone with Mr. Ryan? She never smiles like that when she talks to you. This observation is heartbreaking for Marcus, but it also makes him realize that the children have noticed a change in Elena's behavior. 8-year-old Sophie has an intuitive understanding despite her young age. She starts telling Marcus about Elena's secret phone calls and how she hides her cell phone screen from the kids. Marcus also taught Sophie how to use the recording feature on Elena's iPad, initially, so she could record herself singing to him. But Sophie soon realized that this feature could be used to record other conversations. Sophie begins recording a phone conversation she overhears between Elena and Ryan. At first, the recordings just capture some intimate conversations, but soon they begin to reveal deeper layers of Elena and Ryan's plans. In one of the recordings, Elena and Ryan discuss their future plans. Ryan suggests that Elena should speed up the divorce process because delaying will only give Marcus more time to find out what we're doing. I'm worried about the kids, Elena says on the recording. They might not want to leave Marcus. The kids will adapt, Ryan replied, his voice cold and calculated. You need to start getting them used to seeing me as a father figure. The recording angered Marcus, but it also gave him valuable information. Elena and Ryan aren't just planning a divorce, they're planning to completely reconstruct their children's lives. Marcus decides it's time to start fighting back. He won't wait for Elena to carry out her plan. He'll take the initiative and systematically dismantle the life she and Ryan have so carefully built. Through Daniel's further investigation, Marcus discovers some interesting information about Ryan's business. Ryan's real estate development company, Sterling Properties, has been using questionable financing methods. More specifically, Ryan has been providing potential investors with inflated property appraisals and concealing significant environmental and structural issues. Marcus anonymously compiles this information into detailed reports that are provided to state real estate boards, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and even the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Within weeks, Ryan began receiving official notifications of the investigation. The State Real Estate Commission began reviewing his license, and the Securities and Exchange Commission began investigating his investment practices. Meanwhile, Marcus begins to attack Elena's professional foundation. He discovered that Elena had made some mistakes on her tax return, underestimating her income to minimize her tax liability. This information is provided anonymously to the IRS. But Marcus' most effective strategy is to directly influence Elena's customer base. He began discreetly approaching Elena's clients, not to slander her, but to voice concerns. "I just wanted to let you know," Marcus tells one of Elena's key clients, a retired doctor who is selling his mansion, that Elena has recently experienced some personal issues that may be affecting her professional focus. "I don't want to go into details, but as her husband, I think you should be aware of the situation." This method is very effective. Customers began to question Elena's reliability, some canceled contracts, and others turned to competitors. Elena's income began to plummet. As Elena's world begins to fall apart, she becomes more desperate and reckless. She realizes that some outside force is attacking her life, and while she suspects Marcus, she has no direct proof. Elena decides to accelerate her plan. She hired an aggressive divorce attorney, Michael Torres, known for his aggressive tactics in high-conflict divorce cases. Elena and Torres devise a plan to not only get a favorable divorce settlement, but to completely marginalize Marcus. They decided to charge Marcus with emotional abandonment, neglect of the welfare of the family, and even suggested that he might have controlling and potentially violent tendencies. Elena also obtained a temporary restraining order, claiming she was afraid of Marcus' reaction. She told the judge that Marcus had recently become suspicious and paranoid, and that she feared he might do something irrational to her or the children. Marcus returns home to find that the door lock has been replaced. When he knocked on the door, Elena told him through the doorway that by court order, he could no longer enter the house. "I want to see my kids," Marcus said, trying to stay calm. "They're not here right now," Elena lied, though Marcus could hear Sophie watching TV upstairs. "Elena, that's extreme. We can discuss this rationally." "By discussing it with your lawyer," Elena replied, her voice filled with a newfound sense of empowerment. "You've got 24 hours to pack up your things before you need to find somewhere else to live." In that moment, Marcus realizes that Elena is fully invested in her war. There's no turning back. After being forced out of the family home, Marcus moved into a temporary apartment. But he's not intimidated by Elena's legal tactics. Instead, he sees this as the beginning of Elena's fatal mistake. Elena now feels secure and in control and is starting to become overconfident. She began to speak more openly about Marcus in front of the children, portraying him as an irresponsible and uncaring father. What's more, Elena starts letting Ryan stay over and lets the kids call him Uncle Ryan, hinting that he might be their new dad. This behavior was documented by Sophie's continued recording. In one recording, Elena tells the children, "Daddy chose to leave us, but Uncle Ryan chose to stay with us. Maybe it's time to start thinking about who really cares about the family." But Elena's biggest mistake was her decision to record a video message to send to Marcus. In this video, she sits in their bedroom with Ryan at her side and begins a brutal psychological assault. "Marcus, you think you're so smart," Elena says in the video, a triumphant smile on her face. "You think you can hire a lawyer, fight me, and win the kids back? Let me tell you the reality." She continues her monologue, becoming more and more brutal. "The kids are mine now. They don't even mention your name anymore. Sophie called Ryan dad yesterday, and David said he hoped you'd never come back. You know the best part? They believe everything I tell them about you." Elena's cruelty reaches new heights. "We're moving to California," she continued, "and at that point, you'll lose them completely. They will have a new life, a new father, and they will forget the name Marcus Donovan." But Elena made a fatal mistake. She saved the video before sending it, and Sophie knew how to access her mother's cell phone. When Sophie sees the video, she realizes that her mother has become someone she doesn't recognize. This 8-year-old girl made a brave decision. She would keep the video and use it when appropriate. The temporary restraining order obtained by Elena began a bitter legal battle. Her attorney, Michael Torres, filed a series of motions not only asking Marcus to leave the family home, but also to limit his access to the children. Torres portrayed Marcus as an unstable and potentially dangerous father in court documents. He claimed that Marcus's recent pattern of behavior showed controlling and paranoid tendencies that could pose a threat to the children's psychological and emotional well-being. These allegations are based on Elena's testimony, in which she claimed that Marcus had become suspicious and questioning, and that he had begun to monitor her activities and possibly even stalk her. She claimed that she was afraid of what Marcus might do, especially if he found out about her legitimate business relationship. Patricia Coleman immediately pushed back against the allegations. She filed a counterclaim, not only denying Elena's allegations, but also raising her own concerns about Elena's inappropriate behavior and neglect of the children's welfare. Elena Donovan has been engaged in a systematic campaign of deception, Patricia wrote in her court papers, not only to her husband, but also to her children. Her behavior shows a complete disregard for family responsibilities and a selfish pursuit of her own desires. The court scheduled an emergency hearing to address the issue of temporary custody. During this period, Marcus was allowed to have supervised visitation with the children twice a week for 2 hours each time. These visits are painful. Sophie and David are clearly confused and sad. They don't understand why their father can't come home and why they can only see him in front of a strange social worker. "Daddy, when can you come home?" Sophie asked during their first supervised visit. Marcus fell to his knees and looked at his daughter, feeling heartbroken. "I'm working on that, baby. But I need you to know that no matter what happens, I will always love you and David." David, though only 11 years old, shows an understanding beyond his years. "Mom said you chose to leave us," he said. "But that's not true, is it?" "No, son, that's not true," Marcus replied. "I would never choose to leave you." These conversations were recorded by Helen Martinez, a supervising social worker. Helen, a seasoned social worker with 20 years of experience, quickly began to notice inconsistencies in the children's discourse. The children obviously love their father and miss him. Their explanation of the separation is inconsistent with the version provided by Elena. More worryingly, children are beginning to refer to Uncle Ryan as an increasing presence in their lives. As the legal process progressed, Elena began to feel more and more confident. She believes she has successfully marginalized Marcus and is now free to build her new life with Ryan. Elena and Ryan begin to act out their relationship more openly. Ryan began regularly spending the night at Donovan's house, where his car was often parked in the driveway. Neighbors began to notice and talk about this apparent arrangement. More importantly, Elena begins to get the kids to accept Ryan as a permanent presence in their lives. She begins to hint that Ryan is not just Uncle Ryan, but could be their new dad. "Ryan really cares about our family," Elena told the kids, "unlike some people he chooses to stay with." This mental manipulation did not escape Sophie's notice. She continues to use her recording skills to document conversations between Elena and Ryan, as well as Elena's attempts to influence her and David's views on their father. In a particularly disturbing recording, Elena tells the children, "Sometimes, when mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, mommy needs to find someone new to help take care of the family. Ryan wants to be that guy. He wants to be your new dad." "But we already have a dad," David protested. "Yes, but your dad chose not to live with us," Elena replied. "Ryan chose to be here with us. Isn't that more important?" These recordings show Elena's systematic attempts to alienate the children from their father while promoting Ryan as a replacement. Elena's overconfidence reaches its peak when she decides to record another video to send to Marcus. This time, her cruelty and malice were more evident than before. In the new video, Elena sits in Marcus' study surrounded by his personal belongings and photos. Ryan sits behind the desk where Marcus used to work, symbolizing his new role in the family. "Did you see that, Marcus?" Elena began, her voice filled with malicious satisfaction. "This is what your home looks like now. Ryan now sits in your place, sleeps in your bed, and takes care of your children." She stood up and walked toward the family photos in the room. "You know what my favorite part is? Kids are starting to forget about you in these pictures. Yesterday, Sophie asked me who the man in the picture was. Your daughter, Marcus, is beginning to forget your face." Elena picked up a picture of Marcus and the kids and made a dramatic gesture, pretending to rip it up. "Maybe it's time to update our family photos. After all, Ryan is the man of the house now." Ryan speaks in the video, his voice filled with false sympathy. "Give it up, Donovan. You've failed. Find your own life, and let's build our family in peace." Elena ends the video with a particularly brutal statement. "When we moved to California, the kids wouldn't even ask to say goodbye to you. They will be too excited about their new life and starting new adventures with their new dad. You will be history, Marcus, an unpleasant memory they will eventually forget. But Elena makes the same fatal mistake again. She saved the video and Sophie was able to access it. When Sophie saw Elena's latest video, she made a very brave decision for her age. She realizes that her mother has become a cruel and manipulative person and she needs help to save her family. Sophie finds David and shows him the video. Although David was only 11 years old, he immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "We need to help Dad," Sophie told her brother. "Mom is lying and she wants everyone to believe Dad is bad." David nods. "I know. I've been taking notes on what my mom says, and she's always at odds with what she tells everyone else." The siblings decide to join forces to gather evidence on behalf of their father. David begins to record Elena's lies and inconsistencies more systematically, while Sophie continues her recording activities. They also began to express their feelings more openly to Helen, the social worker who supervised the visits. "I want to live with my dad," Sophie told Helen during a visitation. "Mom is always angry, and she makes Uncle Ryan yell at us." "Mr. Ryan yelled at you guys?" Helen asked, and she was immediately alert. "Yes," David confirmed. "When we're too loud, or when we mention Dad. Mom says we shouldn't talk about Dad because it makes Mr. Ryan uncomfortable." These revelations are deeply concerning to Helen. She begins to record the children's statements in more detail and begins to question the version of the family situation provided by Elena. Helen also noted the quality of the children's interactions with Marcus. The children were visibly relaxed and happy during the visit. They share school stories with their father, seek his advice, and clearly enjoy his attention. This contrasts with Elena's portrayal of a scared or uncaring father. The day before the decisional hearing, Marcus had a final strategy session with Patricia Coleman. "We have strong evidence," Patricia told Marcus. "Recordings showing Elena's attempts to alienate the children, financial records showing her deceptive behavior, and social worker reports supporting the children's strong connection to you." "But what is the strongest evidence?" Marcus asked. Patricia smiles. "It's a confident expression. Elena's own video. Her cruelty and malice will speak in court. No judge is going to ignore this obvious manipulation and psychological abuse." "Is Sophie really willing to show these videos in court?" "She insisted," Patricia replied, "and that little girl was braver than many adults. She knows what's right, and she's willing to stand up for it." That night, Marcus had his last phone conversation with the children. Although Elena tries to limit their contact, the kids have found ways to stay in touch with him. "Dad, tomorrow we'll tell the judge the truth," Sophie said on the phone, "and we'll tell him we want to live with you." "I love you guys, no matter what happens," Marcus replied. "You're both the most important things in my life." "We know, Dad," David said, "and everything will be fine tomorrow." Now Marcus sits in the courtroom, watching the final showdown he's been meticulously planning for months. The courtroom was packed. Lawyers, social workers, family members, and even some local journalists who had heard about the dramatic nature of the case. Judge Hartwell is an experienced family law judge known for his impartiality and strong commitment to the best interests of children. He had reviewed all the evidence presented, but nothing could prepare him for the drama that was about to unfold. Elena sat at the plaintiff's table looking nervous but still confident. She wore a conservative blue suit and tried to project the image of a responsible mother. Next to her, her attorney, Michael Torres, flipped through papers in preparation for what he thought would be a straightforward custody case. Marcus was seated at the defense table with Patricia Coleman. He looked calm and determined, but inside, his heart was pounding with nervousness and anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Hartwell began, "we are here today to resolve the temporary and permanent custody arrangements in the Donovan versus Donovan custody case." Torres spoke first, repeating Elena's allegations. He portrays Marcus as a neglectful and potentially unstable father, claiming that Elena is the only parent who can provide a stable and safe environment for her children. "Your Honor," Torres said, "Ms. Elena Donovan is a dedicated mother who has been the primary caregiver for her children. Mr. Marcus Donovan's recent behavior, including his suspicious and possibly stalking activities, indicates a person unfit for custody." Patricia's rebuttal is systematic and devastating. She plays audio recorded by Sophie showing Elena trying to manipulate the children against their father. She presented financial records showing Elena's deception and secret asset transfers. She cites a report by Helen, a social worker, detailing children's apparent preference for being with their fathers. Your Honor, Patricia said, we have before us not a neglectful father, but a manipulative mother who systematically tries to alienate her children from their father. But the turning point in court came from an unexpected source. Your Honor, Sophie sprang to her feet, her little voice ringing clearly through the courtroom. I have something to show you. Judge Hartwell looks surprised, but he gestures for Sophie to approach the bench. What is it you wish to show me, young lady? Sophie held up Elena's cell phone. My mom made the video and sent it to my dad. I think you should see what kind of person she really is. Elena's face immediately turned pale. She tries to stand up in protest, but Torres pulls on her arm. Your Honor, Torres began, this child cannot be a witness. She's too young to understand what she's doing. But Judge Hartwell held up his hand for silence. In view of the unique nature of this case and the courage shown by this child, I will allow this evidence to be played. Please continue, Sophie. Sophie connects her cell phone to the courtroom display system. The entire room fell into absolute silence as everyone held their breath waiting for what was about to be played. The video begins to play. Elena's face appears on the big screen, her expression full of malice and cruel satisfaction. Her voice echoed clearly in the silent courtroom, each word striking everyone present like a hammer blow. Did you see that, Marcus? This is what your home looks like now. Ryan now sits in your place, sleeps in your bed, and takes care of your children. There were shocked gasps from the courtroom. The audience in the jury box looks at each other, clearly shocked by the brutality of Elena's words. Even seasoned judges look shocked. The video continues to play, and Elena's malice becomes more apparent. You know what my favorite part is? Kids are starting to forget about you in these pictures. Yesterday, Sophie asked me who the man in the picture was. Marcus saw a look of disgust on the faces of several people in the courtroom. An older woman in the jury box begins to shake her head, clearly shocked by Elena's cruelty. When Ryan appeared in the video and said, "Give it up, Donovan, you failed," the atmosphere in the courtroom became tense and uncomfortable. The video ends with Elena's cruelest statement. When we moved to California, the kids wouldn't even ask to say goodbye to you. You will be history, Marcus, an unpleasant memory they will eventually forget. When the video ended, there was dead silence in the courtroom. The silence was so complete that the hum of the air conditioning system and the sound of someone nervously clearing their throat could be heard. Judge Hartwell's face turned serious and angry. He looks over to Elena, who is now as pale as paper, obviously realizing the devastating blow this video has dealt to her case. Her hands trembled under the table, and her lawyer looked equally shocked and disturbed. Mrs. Donovan, the judge said, his voice low and full of controlled anger. I need you to explain what we just saw. Is this really the video you recorded and sent to your husband? Elena's lawyer tries to get up to speak, but Elena stops him with shaking hands. She knew there was no defense, no explanation, no excuse for what had just been played. That's, Elena began, her voice almost a whisper of fear and desperation. It was recorded under extreme pressure. I was so angry and frustrated that I said things I shouldn't have. Mrs. Donovan, Judge Hartwell interrupted, his voice loud and authoritative, echoing in the silence of the courtroom. I've been in family court for 24 years. I have seen many difficult and painful cases during this time, but I've never, ever seen a case of parental alienation this obvious and extreme. The judge's anger became more pronounced. Not only did you just admit in the video to deliberately manipulating these children against their father, but you openly mocked a father's relationship with his children. Even more disturbing is your expressed intent to intentionally remove these children from the jurisdiction in order to prevent their father's access altogether. Judge Hartwell continued, his voice becoming harsher. Furthermore, the fact that you recorded this video in the bed where their father once slept, with your lover in tow, shows a complete and utter disregard for the emotional and psychological well-being of these children. The judge turned to Sophie, and his expression immediately softened with warmth and appreciation. Sophie, you are a very, very brave little girl. What you did here today showed great courage. Can you tell the court why you decided to show us this video? Sophie's voice was small, but could be clearly heard by everyone in the silent courtroom. Her words were clear and firm, showing a maturity beyond her years. Because nothing my mom says is true, Sophie said. I never called Ryan dad. I don't want a new dad. I want my real dad, and I want to live with him because he loves me and David. She paused, then continued, her voice becoming firmer. Mom kept asking David and I to say bad things about Dad, that he didn't love us, that he had abandoned us. But none of this is true. Dad was a good man. He never hurt us. We miss him every day. The judge nodded, his expression full of sympathy and understanding. Then he looked over to David, who had been sitting in the back row of the courtroom, nervously watching the proceedings that were taking place. David, the judge said gently, would you like to tell the court how you feel? You don't have to be afraid. No one here will punish you for telling the truth. 11-year-old David stood up, his voice more mature and sure than his years. Though he was clearly nervous, his determination was evident. Your Honor, David began, my mom has been trying to get Sophie and I to lie about my dad. She told us that he didn't love us, that he chose his job over us, that he abandoned us. But none of this is true. David's voice became more assertive and emotional. My dad is the best dad in the world. He taught me how to play soccer, he helped me with my math homework, and he read bedtime stories to Sophie and me. He would comfort us when we were afraid. When we're happy, he laughs with us. David paused for a moment as tears began to form in his eyes. Ryan's not our dad. We don't want him to be our dad. He yelled at us. He said we were too loud. He wouldn't let us talk about our real dad. We want our dad back. We want to live with him. Many in the courtroom were moved by David's sincerity and pain. Some audience members were wiping tears from their eyes, and even some lawyers seemed emotional. Elena is now weeping openly, but these are not tears of sorrow, but of despair, fear, and self-pity. She realizes that not only has she lost her children, she faces serious legal consequences. Her elaborate plan has completely collapsed, and her true character has been exposed in court. Judge Hartwell spent a few minutes organizing his notes and thinking about everything he had heard and seen. Finally, he looked up, ready to deliver his verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Hartwell said, his voice formal and authoritative. Based on the evidence I've seen and heard today, this is one of the clearest custody cases I've encountered in years. The judge's voice became more serious. Ms. Elena Donovan's behavior constitutes a textbook example of parental alienation. She has systematically tried to destroy her children's relationship with their father, not out of concern for their welfare, but out of vindictiveness and selfish motives. Judge Hartwell continues. Even more troubling, Ms. Elena demonstrated a complete lack of understanding or concern for the psychological and emotional impact of her behavior on the children. Her videos show not only cruelty and malice, but also a pathological and narcissistic personality, one that makes her unfit to serve as a primary guardian. The judge turned to Marcus. In contrast, Mr. Marcus Donovan, despite extreme provocation and emotional pain, showed restraint, maturity, and genuine concern for the welfare of the children. This conclusion is further supported by the children's obvious love and attachment to their father and their clear expression of their desire to live with him. Judge Hartwell announced his final decision. Accordingly, full legal and physical custody is hereby immediately granted to Marcus Donovan. Elena Donovan will be allowed supervised visitation for 3 hours every 2 weeks, but only after she completes court-ordered mandatory parenting classes, psychological evaluations, and anger management classes. The judge paused for a moment, then continued with more drastic measures. In addition, I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting Elena Donovan and Ryan Sterling from approaching these children except during designated supervised visitation. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and possible imprisonment. Judge Hartwell's final pronouncement was the most scathing. Finally, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for consideration of criminal charges against Elena Donovan, including, but not limited to, parental alienation, perjury, child psychological abuse, and possible intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge finally turned to Elena, his voice full of disgust and disappointment. Ms. Elena Donovan, your actions are not only morally reprehensible, they are legally unacceptable. You used your own children as a weapon to hurt their father, and you did damage to their psychological well-being that could last a lifetime. This court and this community will not tolerate such behavior. Chaos erupted in the courtroom when the judge adjourned the hearing. Marcus felt a great sense of relief and triumph surge through his body. 8 months of careful planning, agonizing, and fighting finally paid off. Sophie and David immediately ran to their father and hugged him tightly. Marcus drops to his knees and hugs his children, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Are we home yet, Dad?" Sophie asked, her small face pressed against Marcus' chest. "Yes, baby," Marcus replied, his voice quivering with emotion. "We're going home." Elena sits at the plaintiff's table, surrounded by her lawyers and impending legal and personal disaster. She's lost her children, she's facing criminal charges, her real estate career is over, and Ryan has begun to distance himself from her to protect his interests. The cost of her betrayal was total, irreversible, and devastating. Marcus leaves the courtroom with his children feeling not the thrill of vengeance, but the deep satisfaction that justice has been served. He did not use violence or illegal means. Instead, he uses patience, strategy, and Elena's own malice to destroy her. Over the next few months, Elena will face the full consequences of her behavior. The prosecutor's office filed multiple charges, and she was ultimately convicted of parental alienation and perjury and sentenced to 2 years of probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment. She lost her real estate license, and financial problems forced her to file for bankruptcy. Ryan Sterling faces multiple charges of business fraud as his real estate empire crumbles. His relationship with Elena ends quickly, leaving her alone to face the consequences of her choices. Most importantly, Sophie and David began the healing process. With the help of a professional therapist, they learned to deal with the trauma they have experienced, rebuild trust in adults, and understand that their mother's behavior is not their fault. A few months later, on a warm summer evening, Marcus, Sophie, and David were sitting in their backyard in their repossessed home. Sophie snuggled into Marcus's arms while David sat next to her as they watched the sun slowly set and the sky turn beautiful shades of orange and pink. "Dad," Sophie said suddenly, breaking the cozy silence, "I'm glad I recorded those videos." Marcus hugged her tighter, feeling infinite love and pride. "Me too, baby. You and David are both very brave. You saved our family." David looked at his father, and there was a new maturity in his eyes. "Will Daddy, Mommy still try to take us away?" Marcus considered his answer, wanting to be honest but not wanting to scare the kids. "No way, son. The judge has ensured that this will never happen again. You're both safe now, and we'll be together forever." As night falls and the three continue to sit together, they are no longer pieces of a broken family, but a family reunited through love, truth, and perseverance. Elena chose betrayal over loyalty, greed and selfishness over family and responsibility. Now she suffers the full consequences of those choices alone, while Marcus and his children have a second chance to build a new life based on honesty, mutual respect, and unconditional love. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.